The bully's fist flies at your face, intent on smashing your nose and then taking your lunch money. But you've got a trick up your sleeve. You freeze reality and buy yourself one precious second to act. Congratulations, you have the power of 2002 Internet, the ability to stop time for exactly 1 second at a time. Pick out your superhero costume because you're officially Leg Man, with the slightly disappointing power of stopping time for a second. We're going to show you just how that could make you a true superhuman though. First, there's the science-y stuff to get out of the way. You see, the problem is you're stopping time and, well, you are a part of time. Let's explain. There are 3 components of the universe. Well, 4, but y'all ain't ready for number 4 yet. Matter, energy, and space-time. You can convert matter into energy and energy into matter. Time, well, time is sort of like a VHS tape. Most of you probably don't know what a VHS tape is, but you might have heard about it. It comes from a simpler time before the literal dystopia of low wages, unaffordable housing, and crypto scam coins. When you play a VHS tape, movie or music plays, and when you pause it, the music and or movie also pauses. So when you're pausing time for a second, you're pausing the entire universe, including yourself. So congratulations on having the superpower you can use exactly 1 time before you lock all of reality into a stasis trap that lasts forever. At least you'll also lock any alien explorers from other universes who make the mistake of entering ours, and like a Venus flytrap, getting stuck here for eternity as well. That's some top-shelf multiverse trolling. With the power of plot holes, though, we're gonna make you immune to your own superpower. There's still problems the science nerds are absolutely going to rant about in the comments section. For one, when you pause reality except yourself, of course, you're also pausing the travel of photons through space. And this means the moment you pause time, you're basically blinding yourself. This is because the photons can't continue their journey into your eyeball, where the information they contain is processed into visual information. So if you were hoping to pause time and oogle a girl's locker room, too bad, because you just turned the lights off. But maybe not, because technically, according to how we understand physics today, photons exist outside of time. They don't actually experience time as they travel through space, and from their point of view, they're created and arrive at their final destination instantly. That's thanks to the theory of relativity, which posits that the closer to light speed you move, the slower time goes, until basically time stops altogether. So there is a bit of a paradox here, because if you stop time, then photons can't physically travel to your eyeball, but also the photons are already not experiencing time. So what's the real answer? Listen, this one is significantly above our pay grade. Let's just add in another plot hole, and let's say that stopping time doesn't render you instantly blind. Now, someone's going to yell about planetary motion in the comments because they've made the mistake of confusing stopping time for time travel. Yes, technically every show you've ever seen of people traveling through time should have immediately ended with them stuck inside of other objects or just floating out in the middle of space. The entire universe is constantly moving. The Earth is chugging along at about 67,000 miles per hour. If you don't account for that motion with your time travel, well, there's no telling where you'll end up, but it's not going to be Earth. We're stopping time, though, not time traveling. Now that we've geared you up with enough plot holes to make a decent Marvel movie and protect you from your own superpower, how useful is stopping time for a second, really? Well, we actually did some real experiments to find out, and the results are significant. More on those soon. A second doesn't seem like much time, but when you consider how fast the human brain thinks, having an entire second to mull things over can turn the tide of a lot of different scenarios. To determine how big of an advantage you'd really have, we need to approximate a speed of thought, the time it takes to perceive a situation, process it, and make a decisive move. The problem is there is no clear distinction between those 3 stages of action, and they kinda tend to blur into each other. Also, each person has a different way of thinking. This means that as you take in your surroundings, the information you process could either sharpen your reaction or slow it down. For our purposes, though, we're going to limit the speed of thought to the amount of time needed to take a small, simple action. You're not pausing reality for a second in order to mull over the meaning of the universe, after all. Scientists can use advanced imaging tools like MRIs and electroencephalography to map brain activity in real time. These techniques reveal which part of the nervous system activate and in what order as the brain processes different bits of information. The speed at which the brain thinks, though, depends on 3 factors, the first of which is distance. For instance, signals take longer to travel from the brain to the foot, the furthest extremity, and so hand reactions are faster than foot reactions to stimuli. If you ever stepped on a Lego and burned your hand on a hot stove, you can attest to this. Interestingly, scientists have shown that taller people have slower reactions than shorter people, so short kings remind her that Mr. 6'4" is going to be a few milliseconds less responsive to her needs than you. Then there's the physical construction of the individual neurons themselves. Neurons come in different shapes and sizes, and this is really quite intuitive. The wider and the larger a neuron, the faster the signal can be processed. It's like the difference between driving down a multi-lane highway and being stuck in traffic on a 2-lane road. With your body generating an absolute blitzkrieg of information every millisecond, having larger bandwidth means you can act faster. To complicate matters further, nerve cells have other cells that wrap around the neuron called myelin cells. This helps provide insulation to the neuron, but it doesn't completely cover it, leaving many small gaps where the nerve cell is exposed. Signals traveling along a neuron effectively leap across these gaps, moving much faster than if they had to cover the entire length of the neuron without interruption. It's like broadcasting a radio signal from dish to dish, compared to physically carrying the message all the way to its destination. The difference is huge, too. Nerve signals traveling along neurons with myelin sheaths in the spinal cord travel at approximately 150 to 270 miles per hour. Signals traveling along smaller diameter neurons with no sheaths in your pain receptors travel at anywhere between 1.1 to 4.4 miles per hour. So what does all that boil down to? Well, on average, thoughts can be generated based on perception and acted upon as fast as 150 milliseconds, sometimes less. That's just over 1/10 of a second to make an instinctual decision. Add in more complex thought and you might push that up to 1/5 of a second. Suddenly, your ability to stop time for just 1 second is more significant than you thought. There's a lot of situations where adding an entire second's worth of response time is going to be a significant boon. And as we found out in our real-world test, that extra second to think makes a massive difference. Let's go back to your opening scenario real quick though. You're back in school, and the school bully is intent on stealing your lunch money again. Confident in your superpower, you stand up to him, cue his fat fist flying through the air straight at your face. You pause time. His fist is frozen in midair. Within 1/10 of a second, you already processed the rate of travel of his fist, the direction of its travel, and inevitable destination, your face. In another 1/10 of a second, you decided on a corrective course of action, move to the side. By the time your second of pause time is up, you've already been in motion for at least half a second. And if you're a fan of competitive video games, you'll be even faster. There's numerous studies showing video game players have better reflexes. The bully's fist flies harmlessly through the air, and because it's not meeting the expected resistance, the momentum carries him along with it, causing him to stumble forward. Pause time again. Now you make a quick observation on where his momentum is carrying him, the placement of his feet, how to best exploit that, and by the time reality gets rolling again, you've already moved one of your feet in front of him to trip him. Splat goes the bully, flat on the floor. Completely bewildered by your absolutely lightning-fast reflexes, you can see where a power like this could be the most useful, because if you like physical training, you'd make the perfect boxer or UFC fighter. With the ability to stop time for a second, examine your opponent and react while they're in the middle of the last action they took. But what if you're a lover instead of a fighter? Well, more complex thought will take a longer time to process, but the ability to stop time can be extremely useful in academic and social situations too. Almost everyone has experienced that moment when an attractive person says something to them and then they stumble over their words, scrambling to come up with a response. Well, kiss your 4chan foreveralone.jpg buddies goodbye. With the ability to stop time for a second and think about your reaction, you're going to turn into a Giga Chad. Not really. You still need to know how to actually talk to the opposite sex, but you see the usefulness. Stopping time for a second so you can gather your thoughts and control your emotions will let you better think of a response next time someone attractive says something to you. The ability to basically take a second and breathe can be useful in a bewildering variety of fields. Race car drivers, professional fighters, fighter pilots, you name it. And you could probably find a place where an extra second to process and think would be a superpower. But how much difference does it really make? We decided to find out with a real-world test. Now, obviously, we can't pause time in the real world, but the digital world is our personal playground. With the help of some Discord friends and very clever mod makers, we were able to test out this superpower in a digital setting. That's right, we played video games. Battlefield 1942 was a game ahead of its time. It was simple. No skins, no loot boxes, no complicated campaigns. Just load up with a bunch of friends or strangers and duke it out and capture the flag matches to decide the fate of World War II. Released in 2002, it would go on to spawn a largely disappointing franchise, mostly ruined by its legions of prepubescent fans screaming racist slurs over voice chat and loot boxes. It's not just a game that still holds up, it's also pretty easy to mod nowadays. To test this superpower without trapping all of reality in a permanent stasis, we tossed your favorite lab rat into multiple games of Battlefield 1942, armed with the ability to pause the game for exactly 1 second. The original plan was to do this with multiplayer, but it turned out to be an absolute nightmare. First, we had Challenge Guy play without the superpower. Our lab rat faced off against the game's hardest difficulty bots. Seriously, the AI was very aggressive on hardest difficulty. Even so, our lone human player averaged about a 4-to-1 kill ratio, using a mix of vehicles and good old-fashioned foot combat. We forbade him from using the sniper rifle because we wanted him to be in the action. And that's not too bad, given the AI on hard difficulty cheats as hard as Tom Brady. But when we introduced the ability to stop time for exactly 1 second with the press of a button, the results were drastically different. The panic button option actually came in clutch, especially in tight spots, like rounding a corner or unexpectedly running into an enemy bot in a trench or a room. That 1 second of frozen time allowed our human player time to properly assess the threat and even turn and fire on it. This meant his kill ratio shot to right around 6-to-1, which is an impressive rise of 50%. Keep in mind, these are bots, not humans, so the bots are always aiming, so their reactions are always faster. A human player in a real situation would not be constantly aiming or even holding their weapon at the ready. In the real world, this ability to stop time for a second would give a massive advantage we can't quite recreate here, but we're seeing hints of just how good it can be. Next, we tried a different scenario with modified StarCraft 2. Once more, with a simple press of a button, we could lock all the units into stasis for exactly 1 second while letting Challenge Guy still issue orders to his units. When playing without the ability up against 3 bots set to normal difficulty, well, he lost. We should mention your favorite lab rat specifically mentioned not being the best StarCraft player. However, when we let him activate his superpower ability, he still lost, but he lost less hard. Matter of fact, he was able to recognize threats faster and issue commands to his units to prioritize specific units inside an enemy's attack, significantly improving his effectiveness against AI armies. What was curious is how often the pause button got used. We made it so it couldn't be used back-to-back. It had a cooldown of at least 5 seconds, but Challenge Guy started using the pause button even when not in combat, in order to take a moment to assess the tactical situation. His ability to survive for a full 5 minutes longer against 3 bots, and the fact that he isn't even a particularly good player, clearly shows that the ability to stop time for 1 second at a time may sound like a joke, but it is far from it. What would you do if you could stop time for a second? Would it give you the ultimate edge or just a moment to breathe? Let us know below. Now go check out why it would suck to have superpowers like the Avengers, or click this other video instead.